After 15 years of loyalty, Kira was dismissed with a rehearsed speech and a severance packet. No thank you, no recognition. Just a cold goodbye. But what her bosses did not know was that she had seen it coming. And while they were busy planning her exit, she was quietly preparing to change the game completely. Kira sat across from two women in a glass-walled conference room. One was her department head, Marjorie Thompson. The other, Denise from Human Resources, wore the usual mask of corporate regret. They spoke in polished phrases about restructuring and new directions, each word designed to sound professional, not personal. Kira listened without interruption. After 15 years at TechVantage, she knew this moment was coming. The signs had been too clear to ignore. A few weeks earlier, she had been mistakenly copied on an internal email chain, one that outlined leadership's plan to consolidate her division and quietly eliminate her role. They had no idea she had seen it. When Denise slid a manila folder across the table, Kira accepted it without looking inside. She already knew what it contained. Severance pay, a short extension of health coverage, some career counseling pamphlets she would never use. She nodded politely and smiled. I completely understand, she said, voice steady and calm. The room softened with visible relief. They had expected tears, resistance, shock, but Kira offered none of it. Marjorie, gaining confidence from the silence, reminded her to turn in her keycard, laptop and phone by Friday. Of course, Kira replied. Is there anything else? They were stunned by her composure. She thanked them, stood, and left the room with the same calm steps that had carried her through years of building one of the company's most successful innovations. As she passed the executive conference room, she glanced through the glass wall. Inside, the CEO, Victor Lawson, was animatedly presenting the company's third-quarter revenue projections. Kira's eyes paused on the title slide. She knew exactly which product those numbers depended on. The same product powered by the algorithm she had created. The same technology Victor had once publicly claimed as a company effort, describing her only as one of our engineers. Kira returned to her office and closed the door behind her. She picked up her personal phone and typed a short message. It's happening. Friday is my last day. The reply came within seconds. Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize. Kira looked out the window, her fingers resting lightly on her desk. They thought they had planned her exit, but in truth, they had just set the clock ticking on their own unraveling. In 3 days, she would leave the company quietly. And on Monday, the industry would never look at her the same way again. That evening, Kira arrived at Meridian, an elegant restaurant tucked away from the downtown tech circuit. It was the kind of place where deals were made behind closed screens and wine glasses. Gregory Sullivan was already seated in a private alcove, reserved discreetly in his name. As CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's largest competitor, he understood the value of quiet moves. She's actually letting you go, Greg said with disbelief as she sat down. Kira gave a half-smile. They think they're cutting costs. What they're really doing is cutting their core. Greg shook his head slowly. Victor never did understand what you actually built. He only saw the surface, Kira replied. The interface, the demo reels, the media buzz. But not the architecture. Not the engine underneath it all. Greg's voice lowered. And the patent? Kira nodded. Filed last month. In my name. With full documentation. I built the improvements using my own equipment on my own time. The original version of the algorithm had belonged to TechVantage under her employment contract. But what they failed to notice or chose to ignore was that she had continued developing the algorithm after hours. The result was a new version with dramatically higher efficiency, more than 40% faster, more scalable, and unbound by their legal claim. They still think they own the entire thing, Kira said. But what they own is yesterday's version. Greg reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. The license agreement is here. As soon as you sign, we go live Monday morning. And you join us officially as Chief Innovation Officer. Kira opened the folder. She had already read the documents. A 7-figure signing bonus. Significant equity in the company. Ongoing royalties. And, perhaps most important of all, full recognition of her as the inventor of the patented technology. Greg raised his glass. To new beginnings. Kira clinked her glass against his. To claiming what's mine. They talked late into the evening, finalizing details, mapping out announcements, preparing for a Monday that would shift the balance in the industry. As she stepped out into the night, the air felt crisp and alive. She was no longer moving defensively. She was leading. The company that had tried to bury her had no idea that she was already building something far beyond their reach. And in less than 72 hours, they would find out just how costly their arrogance would become. Thursday passed like a quiet wave rolling through familiar shores. Kira arrived at the office early, greeted the receptionist with her usual warmth, and walked through the corridors she had known for 15 years. Everyone looked at her differently now. Rumors had already begun circulating. Whispers in break rooms, nervous glances from younger colleagues. A few brave souls approached her for LinkedIn recommendations. Others offered sympathetic nods, as though she were heading into retirement instead of preparing to rewrite her own legacy. Kira remained graceful through it all. She spent the day documenting everything. She left behind detailed handover notes, clean project timelines, passwords, process charts. Every file was carefully named, dated, and backed up to the company drive. Every step she took was intentional. Her exit would be impeccable. Not because they deserved it, but because she was protecting herself. This was her evidence. Evidence that she had left nothing undone. That she had acted in full transparency. That she had honored her role even as the company had failed to honor her. By Friday afternoon, Denise from HR sat across from her again, this time for the final exit interview. She wore the same polite mask she had 2 days earlier. You understand that all intellectual property created during your employment remains the property of TechVantage, Denise recited, sliding a standard non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, Kira replied calmly. Anything developed during work hours, using company resources, belongs to TechVantage. She emphasized the word slightly, but Denise did not notice. She was too focused on her checklist to hear the edges in Kira's tone. Do you confirm that you've removed any proprietary data from your personal devices? I have taken nothing that belongs to TechVantage, Kira said, and it was true. The patent was hers. As she packed her personal items, Marjorie stopped by her office. Her posture casual, her voice lined with manufactured concern. I just wanted to check in before you go, she said. You know these decisions aren't personal. Victor thinks the company needs to move in a younger direction. Kira looked up from her box and met Marjorie's gaze. I understand completely, she said. Business is business. Marjorie hesitated just briefly, as if something in Kira's voice made her uneasy. Then she forced a smile and disappeared down the hall. At 5 o'clock, Kira walked out of TechVantage for the last time. No one followed. No applause. No farewell speeches. Just her, a cardboard box, and a quiet certainty that everything was going exactly as planned. Because while they thought she had nothing left, Monday would prove they were wrong. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. Kira woke before sunrise, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, and watched the first light spill across the city skyline. Today was not a comeback. It was a new chapter written on her own terms. At precisely 7:30, a black town car from Precision Systems pulled up to her building. She stepped inside with quiet purpose. Her phone buzzed just as they turned onto the expressway. The press release is live, Greg messaged. News outlets are already picking it up. She opened the article on her phone. Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary data algorithm. Welcomes Dr. Kira Jennings as Chief Innovation Officer. Her name was printed in bold. Her work credited in full. The announcement described her as the sole inventor of the new algorithm and detailed how the technology would power Precision Systems' next generation of products. It also made something else unmistakably clear. Any company currently using the technology, including TechVantage, would now need to secure licensing rights from Precision Systems. By 8:30, industry forums were buzzing. At TechVantage headquarters, the executive meeting that had been scheduled as a standard weekly check-in had transformed into a full-blown crisis session. Kira's former lead developer, Miguel, sent her real-time updates from the inside. Victor just stormed into the boardroom. Everyone's scrambling. Legal is digging through all your files. Kira, sitting calmly in her new corner office, sipped her coffee and typed a short reply. Check your personal email. Miguel's answer came quickly. You offered us all jobs. We accept. All 6 of us. At 9:15, Victor Lawson sent her a desperate email. Kira, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Kira did not respond. She forwarded the message to Precision Systems' legal department. By noon, TechVantage stock had dropped 7%. Investors were calling. Journalists were speculating. Tech blogs had already named the story the algorithm coup. Greg stepped into her office mid-afternoon. How are you feeling? He asked. Not triumphant, Kira said softly. Just seen. It wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition. For years her ideas had been passed off, downplayed, diluted. Now they were leading an entire company forward. Outside, the sky was beginning to turn golden. Kira looked out the window, watching the light stretch across the city. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of everything. By Tuesday morning, the aftershocks had become impossible to contain. TechVantage's leadership scrambled to maintain control. Their board called emergency sessions. Analysts issued urgent memos. Rumors of lawsuits began circulating in industry circles, but nothing stuck. Kira's documentation was airtight. Miguel kept her informed. They've pulled every server from the research department. Legal is combing through everything. They're trying to prove the algorithm was developed in-house. Kira simply forwarded his message to the legal team at Precision Systems. Their reply came in minutes. Let them dig. Every timestamp, every log, every version. It's all in your name on your time. Meanwhile, Kira began building her new team. The transition for Miguel and the 5 other engineers was already in motion. New workstations were prepared. Access credentials arranged. Welcome packets delivered. Their first official day would be next Monday. Greg was thrilled. You've done more in 48 hours than most executives do in 6 months, he said during their weekly leadership sync. We're already seeing a shift in how competitors are responding. Kira was focused on moving forward. She had no interest in gloating or looking back. But the irony was hard to ignore. At TechVantage, executives who had once dismissed her concerns now found themselves answering to shareholders. The head of legal who had overlooked the patent filing was replaced. Marjorie resigned under pressure after being questioned by the board. Then came the message from Denise, the same HR manager who had handed Kira her severance folder with a practiced smile just days earlier. Kira, her voicemail said carefully, I'm calling to discuss the situation with your patent. Victor was hoping to explore options for possible collaboration. Kira sent a brief response through her assistant. All discussions must go through legal. Precision Systems is open to licensing, under appropriate terms. Her tone was neutral. No anger. No glee. Just facts. By Wednesday afternoon, TechVantage stock had dropped nearly 20%. Internal morale plummeted. Several long-term clients began reaching out to Precision Systems, worried about the future of the products they relied on. Kira remained steady. The more the noise grew louder outside, the more quietly she worked. Her vision was finally being built on a foundation she controlled. Her team respected her leadership. Her ideas weren't filtered through other voices. Her name was no longer buried in footnotes. For the first time in her career, Kira Jennings had both a seat at the table and her name on the blueprint. And no one would take it from her again. By the end of the week, TechVantage had entered full damage control. 2 major clients had requested meetings with Precision Systems. They expressed concern over whether TechVantage could maintain its flagship software without the core algorithm. Kira's name, once whispered quietly in corridors, now appeared in industry headlines. On Friday morning, her assistant walked into the office holding a white envelope. It's from TechVantage, she said. Marked confidential. Addressed to you directly. Kira opened it without pause. Inside was a letter from Richard Donovan, the interim CEO recently appointed after Victor Lawson stepped down. The tone was respectful. Measured. He acknowledged what had happened. He admitted that previous management had failed to properly protect intellectual property or honor the innovators behind it. He expressed interest in negotiating a formal licensing agreement for the algorithm. And most notably, he included a line that no one at TechVantage had ever been willing to say before. We recognize Dr. Kira Jennings as the sole inventor of the technology currently in dispute. She stared at that sentence for a long moment. It wasn't just ink on paper. It was the admission they had refused to make for years. It was validation delayed but undeniable. Greg read the letter later that afternoon. Well, he said, closing the folder. They finally understand the cost of ignoring the people who build the future. They're not the only ones watching, Kira replied. Companies are rethinking how they handle innovation, patents, and credit. She wasn't wrong. Tech blogs were running think pieces. Conferences began adjusting their panels to include more female engineers. A message was echoing across the industry. Innovation is not anonymous. And neither are the people who create it. Kira drafted a measured response to Donovan. She referred him to Precision Systems' legal department to begin licensing negotiations. She thanked him for the acknowledgement but made it clear, this wasn't personal. It was structural. That evening she walked through the halls of her new company. Engineers greeted her with real respect. Executives listened when she spoke. And no one needed reminding of her title. At home, she opened her journal and wrote a single sentence across a blank page. They finally put my name where it belongs. It was never about revenge. It was about rewriting the rules so no one like her would ever be written out again. 3 months later, Kira stood backstage at the National Technology Innovation Conference. The same event where, just 1 year earlier, she had sat quietly in the back row while Victor Lawson took the stage and claimed credit for work she had built line by line. Now the spotlight was hers. Next, the moderator announced, please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Kira Jennings, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and creator of the algorithm that's transforming enterprise computing. Applause filled the auditorium. She stepped to the podium composed and steady. Her face glowed in the soft lights. But her power came from something deeper, from every room she had once been overlooked in, from every idea she had seen taken and renamed. She began. Today, I want to talk not just about algorithms but about acknowledgement. About the hidden cost of forgetting who the real builders are. She spoke of her journey with grace. She did not mention TechVantage by name. She didn't have to. Everyone already knew the story. Instead, she focused on something bigger. On the young engineers in the audience who kept notebooks full of ideas. On the women who stayed quiet in meetings. On the people who thought their only option was to work hard and hope someone noticed. She told them the truth. You don't need to shout to be heard. But you do need to protect your voice. Her speech was equal parts technical insight and quiet defiance. She explained how she documented her work. How she filed her own patent. How she built without waiting for permission. Afterward at the reception, a young woman approached her, eyes wide and bright with something between awe and ambition. Your story changed how I work, she said. I started keeping my own logs, saving my own versions, tracking my progress on personal time. Kira smiled. Smart. Your future self will thank you. That evening back at her office, she found an industry alert in her inbox. TechVantage signs licensing deal with Precision Systems. Acknowledges Dr. Kira Jennings as technology creator. The moment was official. But Kira didn't linger in it. She was already reviewing a roadmap for their next platform. Already sketching out the next evolution of her algorithm. Already mentoring new voices within her team. The world now knew her name. But her goal had never been recognition alone. It was to change the system so one day, no one would have to fight this hard just to be seen. 1 year to the day after she was asked to clear out her desk, Kira stood in the center of her new office. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the space in sunlight. Framed patents lined the wall, all bearing her name. Her desk was stacked with project briefs, investor notes, and a handwritten thank you card from a young engineer she had mentored. It wasn't the size of the office that mattered. It was the fact that she had built the path that led to it. Greg knocked gently and stepped inside, carrying a slim white envelope and a bottle of champagne. Happy anniversary, he said with a grin. You've officially been Chief Innovation Officer for 1 year. The board wanted me to tell you in person. Precision Systems has surpassed TechVantage in market value for the first time. Kira raised an eyebrow, her smile quiet but satisfied. It's not about the numbers, she said. It's about finally building something on a foundation that can't be taken. He placed the envelope on her desk. It's an invitation. Women in Technology's annual leadership summit. They want you to deliver the opening keynote. Topic suggestion: owning your innovation. I think they already know the answer. She opened the envelope and read the letter. Her name was bold at the top, no longer buried behind departments or hidden in footnotes. She set it beside her framed patent, the one that had started it all. There was no anger left in her. No need to relive what had been done, because what mattered more was what she had done with it. Through her guidance, 3 major products had launched in the past year, each built upon the architecture she had once been told was just back-end logic. Her team had grown by 30%. Retention was the highest in company history. And most importantly, every contribution, no matter how small, was credited and celebrated. TechVantage had stabilized, but it would never recover the ground it had lost. And it would never again underestimate the value of the people behind the code. Kira poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to Greg. To the innovators, she said. And to the ones who refused to be erased, he replied. As the sun sank over the city, Kira turned back to her desk. Her past had tried to silence her. Her future would amplify others. She had fought not just to be seen, but to make sure no one like her would ever be invisible again. And now her name wasn't just remembered. It was respected. Forever in print. Forever where it belonged.